In this lesson, we're going to take the time to learn about the import page directive, and we're going to see some scriptlets at the same time. In order to get this one set up, we need to go out and get the JSP scriptlets.war file and import that into our project. So once that's imported, everything should be in place, and we'll include in this now our helpers for the DB Manager and the queries that we had before, as well as our DB Manager models and all of that information. So all that's the same as what we had from last section. Additionally, because we're starting to use the database now, we have a couple configurations you need to make sure. So once again, if you've changed your database, you'll need to make sure that you set that all up. The web XML will need to be modified. Make sure you have your listener turned on. I did change the name of the package for these to make more sense for our overall project. com.worldmanager is a very good package name, so we'll go ahead and use that going forward. And you can see we still have the context parameters that are needed. And I've lowered the welcome file list right down to index.jsp just to save us a little space there. That should all be set up already. If you've set up those same attributes, you should be good to go. Make sure also that you configure your build path and make sure that you include your connector J as your external jar included from your Apache directory so that you can have that running and you won't get a null error when you try to run the database. We have also added in this section a page called listcities.jsp. So this is going to be our straightforward listing page, and in this we're going to look at a couple different things. First of all, the import directory that we're going to place in the page directive. So our page directive will always have a language which tells us what language we're programming in, a content type, and some page encoding. And there are some other properties that we can see along the way. One of them is import, so we can import for code for scripting. And of course, if you hit Control and hit Space, you should be able to get your IntelliSense up. You can see some of the other ones. Now, we'll spend some more time with a few of these in future sessions, but you should be aware of these and be able to use them if you needed to. Since we're using scripts, we're going to have this scriptlet in this page to actually do everything just like we had before from a servlet. We need to import our libraries that we need to use. So in order to get to the database, we need java.sql.star. You can see that these are all in one set of quotes. Every different library is separated by commas. And we need our two packages that hold our database objects, the DB helpers and the DB models. And that import statement will then allow us to import that code, and that will give us the ability to use the code on our page. So let's go ahead and expand this a little bit. So we don't know how to use expressions yet. We'll learn those later in this section. So since we don't know that, we basically have no other choice at this point but to render everything on the screen. We could have gone out and put some stuff into session, and that would be better for the MVC model. What we'll see down here is that we're actually going to be in violation of MVC here when we actually go out and start pulling stuff from the database. This is all controller action that we need to separate out from our view. Right now, we're just going to go ahead and do it this way. But I want to point out a couple other things. We talked about this a little bit in our overview, but some of our objects are not quite named the same as they were when we were working directly from a servlet. So from a servlet, we were saying get servlet context.getAttribute world DB manager. Now I want to point out that that should still work. There shouldn't be any problem with that code. But now that we're on a JSP page, we can leverage the JSP implicit objects. Here we have application, which will get us the servlet context. We can get the attribute from that and pull the DB manager information. Once we have that in place, then we now have our DB manager that we can use. We note that java.lang is not needed at import. So string builder is available to us even though we've not imported java.lang. So that's nice to know. Just like if we were building a regular Java application, we don't have to worry about importing that library. Our DB connection handled the same. Our same table creation. Again, here's our error for MVC. This will, of course, work as we build our code, but we need to evaluate this and build better MVC going forward. So we're going to want to be able to move this out of the view and just be able to work with data and render it from the view only. And here, the last change is we no longer need to grab the print writer from the response because, again, with the page objects we can just go right to out and print that information out. So that will wrap up our code for the cities here. So let's just take a look and run it. Let's start with index just to have our common base. Here's our site, and our home is still going to bring us there. But now when we pull up our cities, you can see that our list cities is actually going to pull up our data from the database and work just like our servlet did, although now we're actually doing that from a scriptlet. So what we saw in this, a very brief look at scriptlets, we saw how to use the import to pull data. The import pulls these libraries into our code so that we can use them in our scriptlets. And you can imagine that inside of the scriptlet blocks, which is the less than and percent and the closing percent greater than, we can do any Java code that we so desire.